Welcome back to the deep dive. We tear through the stacks so you can get instantly informed. Today we're strapping in for a trip actually into global horror, specifically Thailand. We're looking at a huge new installment in a major franchise there. Yeah, we're talking Death Whisper 3. The Thai title is Tantu 3, Tiad 3. It's a 2025 supernatural horror film. Now, you might not have heard of this franchise, but wow, judging by the opening numbers, it seems like everyone in Thailand has.
And that's really our mission today, isn't it? To analyze that exact tension. I mean, how do you square this massive, staggering box office success with, well, early critical feedback that suggests the film might be hitting that franchise fatigue wall? We need to figure out if this third movie actually strengthens the whole saga, or if maybe it dilutes what fans liked in the first place.
And staggering is the right word. That's the hook for this dive, really. The film opens so strongly. Reports say around, 60 million nationwide just on its first day, and then within a few days, it blew past 200 million, just like that.
Yeah, that kind of domestic success, it really signals something, doesn't it? It shows the franchise has tapped into a cultural nerve. It's hitting specific fears, local folk traditions, things that maybe make typical criticism less relevant for that audience. But the fact remains, those huge numbers are right alongside these pretty strong online reactions saying Death Whisperer 3 just didn't quite measure up to the first two.
Okay, so let's unpack some of the basics that might explain why critics and audiences, or at least online voices, seem a bit divided. It's produced by Major Joint Film and BEC World. Standard stuff there. But the sources flag something huge: the director. Narit Yuvabun is making his debut here. He replaced the original director, though Thanadeb Pradit is back as a co-director this time.
The debut director jumping into a successful high-stakes sequel like this, that's always a gamble. Always. It could bring a fresh eye, sure, but there's also that immediate risk, compromising the established tone, maybe the coherence that pulled in that huge audience to begin with. It's not just a technical detail. It could signal a real creative shift, maybe even a fracture.
And that creative uncertainty, it feels compounded by the story choice they made. Sources say Part 3 takes a big swing narratively. It's not just another possession story. It explicitly, quote, explores the origin of the Black Spirit and reveals the reason behind its deep-seated hatred toward humanity. That's ambitious.
Oh, it's a massive mythology play.
Yeah.
Huge. It's trying to shift from just like an isolated ghost story into a full-on lore saga. And if you connect that back, it explains why the film is now only based on characters created by Crittenden, not a direct adaptation anymore. They're basically charting new territory, inventing the rules of their own universe, sort of on the fly.
That sounds very modern franchise building, like a horror cinematic universe attempt almost. But wait, if critics were already a bit worried about structural weaknesses or franchise fatigue, isn't adding all this complex lore just doubling down on the risk?
It absolutely is. You could argue they're trying to solve one problem, formulaic repetition, by potentially creating a bigger one. Over-explanation, or maybe weak explanation. And to really get why they took that leap, I think we need to look at the cracks that were already showing in the first two films.
Right, context is key. Before we judge Part 3's execution, why was this franchise so popular to begin with? What were those strengths that built this foundation for a, 200 million opening?
Well, the big ones were atmosphere and very effective cultural grounding. The first two films got a lot of praise for weaving traditional Thai folk horror elements, the remote villages, the deep forests, ancient spirits, into a mainstream genre template.
Right.
It felt authentic, not just generic horror.
And it wasn't just mood, right? The sources mention high production values, specifically like really good practical effects and gore, visceral stuff. I think one review mentioned a scene with a girl bleeding out that really landed, satisfied that need for physical horror alongside the dread.
Exactly. And crucially, there was an emotional core. That gave it stakes. The focus on family bonds, sibling dynamics. The older brother comes back, the younger sister gets possessed. It grounded the horror. It wasn't random. It felt personal, domestic.
Okay, but those same sources pointed out recurring issues, structural problems that Part 3 really needed to fix. So what were those weaknesses? The ones that maybe pushed the filmmakers towards this big origin story gamble?
Yeah, the list is pretty telling. First, the story structure was pretty conventional, standard possession stuff, really. By film 3, that familiarity can become a real drag. Second, there was consistent criticism about weak character development and motivation. Reviewers felt some characters were just there, like plot devices, included because they were in the original story, not because they had compelling arcs of their own.
Which is tough. If you don't care about the people, expanding the mythology doesn't really matter much, does it? The terror loses its weight.
Precisely. And the last big thing was pacing. It was inconsistent. That unsettling atmosphere, which was arguably the main strength, it kept, quote, breaking. The films apparently struggled to keep that sense of dread going consistently. So you put it all together. Formulaic structure, kind of weak characters, inconsistent tension. Suddenly a massive creative swing, like revealing the spirit's origin. It starts to look like a necessary risk, maybe. A corrective measure.
So part 3 isn't just adding plot, it's actively trying to fix these foundational problems by going deeper into the lore. Which brings us back to the core question. Why dive into the origin of the Black Spirit now? What was the hope?
Well, the intention seems clear enough. It's about raising the stakes, deepening the audience's investment. The idea, I think, is that knowledge adds value. By giving the evil a backstory, a reason for its hatred, they hope to enrich our understanding of the conflict. They want it to feel less like a random haunting and more like, I don't know, a generational war.
But, and this is the classic horror sequel problem, isn't it? Explain the evil too much, and you risk killing the mystery. Horror, especially supernatural stuff, it often works best when things are uncanny, unknowable.
Absolutely. If the backstory is clunky or too specific or just not very scary, the uncanny just becomes mundane. You demystify the dread. The audience starts picking apart the logic instead of just feeling the terror. And again, this loops back to that director change. If character depth was already maybe a bit shaky, then throwing in a heavier lore-focused plot under a new director, that could easily magnify the weakness. The human story, the family, it needs to be stronger than ever to carry the weight of all that new mythology.
Okay, so the crucial thing for a viewer then is execution. Did the new director manage that balance? Did they deliver the big lore exposition while keeping that tight, scary atmosphere that made the first 2 films such hits?
Right. And based on synthesizing the early commentary, looking at the successes versus the risks, the verdict seems to land somewhere in the middle. We're probably looking at something like a 6.5 to 7.0 out of 10. It's a solid recommendation for fans of, say, Southeast Asian supernatural horror, but maybe not a game changer for the genre overall.
So the good stuff is still there. Sources confirm the merits are present. Decent atmosphere, the production values are still high. And apparently the new direction, exploring the lore, it does strengthen the overall saga. Gives you reasons to care about the Black Spirit's whole deal.
Yes, but the caveats also stick around. It looks like the film doesn't quite overcome those previous flaws. Characterization is still mentioned as an issue, and the whole experience might feel a bit repetitive if you're not already tuned into the specific cultural elements. It's satisfying, perhaps, as popcorn horror, but maybe doesn't fully justify that huge creative gamble it took with the origin story.
So who should be lining up for this one? It sounds like it's really for viewers who are already invested, right? People who know the first 2 films, and obviously die-hard fans of Thai horror and that specific folklore-infused style. If you're coming in totally cold, you might just feel the weight of the backstory without getting the full payoff.
And what's really interesting, I think, is how that huge domestic success tells a story. It shows the film is effectively plugging into those local cultural fears, you know, the power of spirits in the forest, ancient curses, the fear of remote places. That deep cultural embedding seems to be the franchise's strongest, most resilient feature. It lets the local audience maybe forgive structural issues that might bother an international critic more.
That cultural specificity really does seem like the engine here. Which brings us back to that interesting point from the source material. The advice to the filmmakers to maintain ambiguity, even while revealing the origin. So, maybe here's the final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If the commercial success is so tied to cultural resonance, and critical success often hinges on, well, structural originality and maybe even mystery, how much ambiguity does a horror franchise need to hold on to? Especially after 3 films that keep explaining more and more. Is it actually possible to explain the monster without killing the fear that made it so compelling in the first place? That wraps up our deep dive into Death Whisperer 3. Got any thoughts on this? If you've seen the earlier films or if you're just a fan of Thai horror, definitely feel free to share your opinions or maybe your favorite moments in the comments below. I'd genuinely love to hear what you think.
And remember, if you found this analysis useful, well, we're always digging into sources on the latest news, movies, dramas, and books. So please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. It really helps us keep doing these deep dives.
Oh, and hit that bell icon. That way you won't miss any new updates or episodes.
Keep diving deep into whatever sparks your curiosity, and we'll catch you on the next one.